Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 4th River Falls Planning Commission meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Morissette?
Here.
Moody?
Here.
Reese?
Here.
Stiesel?
Here.
Toland?
Here.
Hinsman is
Here.
absent. Oh,
Oh, I said Woolsey.
Woolsey?
Yeah, here.
And Hinsman is absent tonight.
Yeah. Okay, next we'll get approval of the minutes from the June 5th meeting.
I move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next would be public comments. If there's anybody in the audience that has anything they'd like to talk about, now would be the time. Yep, come on up.
Okay, my name is Deb Freeman.
Can you sign in
Is
there?
now the appropriate time to talk about the development that you folks are planning out there?
You can talk now, or you can talk, whichever is fine with me.
Well, I would rather wait because I feel like
that's
I
fine.
need some details before I start spouting off. So if I could
Perfect.
hear details and then address you
Okay,
after
yeah, then
that.
you come up, because we'll have a public hearing for
Okay,
that.
perfect, thank you.
You bet. Anybody else in the audience? Everybody want to wait? Okay. Next, move on to current items. First thing will be consideration and recommendation of a rezoning request in the Sterling Ponds neighborhood. And Brandy will give us a little presentation on this.
Good evening. It's been a while since we've seen you all. Item number 1, the Sterling Ponds rezoning. So we received a request from GMTZ to rezone 2.5 acres in Sterling Ponds. It's the yellow area outlined on the screen, if you can see that. The current zoning is industrial and the proposed zoning is traditional neighborhood development. Earlier this year, the city entered into a purchase agreement with the developer where we would sell that portion of land to the developer with the intent that they would ultimately bring in a final plat for another subdivision that would come out to be 37 new lots. So it'd be divided into 2 phases. The first phase would be the area that's going to be rezoned right now. So it's about 12 lots on that subject site. And that first rezoning and development section would include the construction of Balmoral Place and Newcastle Drive. And then phase 2 would bring in another 25 lots and the construction of Glasgow Street. And the houses that would be built are going to be consistent in the size and character and quality to what's out there today. When we look at rezonings, we want to make sure that we're being consistent with our comprehensive plan. So we took a look at that, and as you can see, the future land use map shows this area is planned for low density single-family housing. The density for that is 2 to 4 dwelling units per acre. So when you take all of the 25 plus 12 proposed lots, it comes out to 3.7 dwelling units per acre, which is in line with what our comprehensive plan proposes. So we had, I posted that there was going to be a rezoning on the site, and we sent letters to the property owners within 300 feet, and I have received no inquiries whatsoever on this particular project. So, based on our review of the zoning ordinance and our comparison with the comprehensive plan and the preliminary plat, and as well as the purchase agreement with the city and the developer, all seems to be in line for this particular project. So staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend approval of this project to the City Council, and a draft resolution is available in your packet. Any questions on this one?
So Brandy, we should expect, as they take down the second section of lots, as it moves closer to Sussex Avenue, is that, if you go back to that,
Which one is Sussex?
the one, if you go back to that one that sort of shows the current finger there, Sussex is the next one to the right, if you will.
Oh, okay. So repeat your question.
So we should expect the next rezoning, because that's all industrial all the way around it now, except for on the, sort of the northeast side?
So here, can you see the pointer here?
Yeah.
So this area in yellow is the only bit that's currently industrial.
Oh,
The rest of this is zoned traditional
that
neighborhood.
is, okay, so that is
Yep.
already rezoned, that's already zoned that?
Yep.
Okay,
So only this area in question, and that's where the 12 lots will fit, and then the extra 25 lots would fit here.
okay, thank you.
So Brandy, is there still going to be a buffer between the industrial area and the housing?
Let's see. The buffer, I believe, is just a berm that exists currently about here. Is that what you mean?
Will it have some, does it have trees now? I haven't
I don't,
noticed.
it does it? I guess it
Yes,
has
it
some
does.
trees.
That's good to know. Okay, thank you.
So there still will be a buffer between the residential and the industrial.
There is a berm, yeah.
That will
And we
stay.
will require street trees as part of the project as well, because that's within our subdivision code.
Okay, any other questions for Brandy?
Would those trees be across the street from those properties too? I mean, there's already some, you said, but I mean, but it's, that side of the street is zoned industrial, so it just has the berm and it has the visual
Buffer.
buffer that is in place, that would be in any industrial.
Right.
Okay. So there isn't gonna be any other additional beautification, if you will, or any kind of things like
Above and
that?
beyond what our subdivision ordinance requires, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And in the past, we've talked about where that street that comes through, if you will, right?
This one here?
There,
Balmoral?
Balmoral
whether that's gonna be the right spot for it, or if it's gonna slide
to the south.
down, for lack of a better word. Because I don't think we've determined that fully yet, depending on how those lots get taken down, is that correct?
I think you might have a better answer for that.
Come to the conclusion that it will be within the right-of-way that is set currently.
Oh, it will be,
It may
okay.
shift a little bit within that right-of-way, but it'll be principally
So we're not
located
gonna
there.
slide it down, now we're gonna keep it in the middle. Okay, I'd missed that part in background. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Brandy? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we recommend resolution PC 2018-05 for the rezoning of, recommending an amendment to the official zoning map of the city of River Falls for the Sterling Ponds neighborhood.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and there again, Brandy, we'll go on to number 2 is a recommendation for a general development plan for Desanctis Park. And Brandy will give us I'm gonna have Brandy give us first answer. She might answer some questions.
Okay.
So then I'll go into public hearing then.
Okay, so next, we're gonna take a look at a request for a general development plan approval for the area that we're calling Desanctis Park Villas. Yep, sorry, it's been a while since I've looked at that. So our applicant's here tonight, Gerard Companies, and the site in question is 7.08 acres. It's just south of Desanctis Park. The current zoning is single-family, low-density residential. What the proposal is 22 twin homes, which is 44 units, and it would include the realignment of Dry Run Road, a new access road to the north of the subdivision, trail connections, and parking for the Desanctis Park Glover Schoolhouse building, and some new stormwater ponds. So there is a purchase agreement background for this one as well. The city entered into an agreement with the Gerard brothers earlier this year, wherein the city would sell the land to create a planned unit development project, similar to what was just shown on the screen. And the city would provide land for road right-of-way, and allow use of the existing stormwater pond as a regional facility. And we also have the option to contribute some money towards the parking lot and an extension of water and sewer to the Glover School. So most of you have been through the PUD process before, some of you have not. So some basics here. The planned unit development allows flexibility in the zoning for certain standards in exchange for some community benefit for the project. So those things that we can be flexible on are land use, parking, signage, and then kind of the bulk standards, height, area, and setback requirements. And I'm going to get into these items later on in the presentation, but when we're thinking about whether or not to approve a PUD, we're looking at the community benefits, character and intensity of land use, economic feasibility and impacts, whether the engineering and design standards are appropriate, and if there's going to be preservation and maintenance of open space. So sorry for this texty slide and just overly long presentation, but I think it's important to hit on all these items. So we look at our different plans when we're taking a peek at these planned unit developments. So we've got the comprehensive plan, the housing needs analysis. So the future land use map shows the area in question to be single-family low density with 2 to 4 dwelling units per acre. So the proposed project would give us 6.2 dwelling units per acre. But when you look at more of the policies within the comp plan, it talks about encouraging a mix of housing types in the community that have access to regional recreational trails for the neighborhoods. So when you're combining the project in question with the neighborhood surrounding it, it leans towards consistency with that comp plan requirement, it could be argued. And then the housing analysis shows that there's a pretty big shortage of housing of all values and types throughout the community. So this project would provide us with another housing option that'd be appealing to, maybe first-time home buyers or empty nesters. So it meets those objectives for the community. Another plan that not everybody might be aware of is Susan, you might have the most project history on this, but back in the early 2000s, there was this conceptual layout of a road network through the park to serve future development of the site in question. This was prepared by the city engineer, and it shows there's a realignment of Dry Run Road and a future connection to Roosevelt Street. So the proposed concept achieves both of these objectives from way back in the early 2000s. So this next section I'm talking about where the proposal departs from our zoning and subdivision standards. So the buildings do not provide direct access from a street. So what I mean by this is that there is shared access basically for 8 of these units. So what we propose in the resolution is that there be some kind of agreement that indicates what the shared access will be for each of these units and how that will be managed and maintained. The second item here is twin homes cannot have a common lot line with another twin home. The purpose of that in the zoning ordinance is to minimize the monotony of too many twin homes, I think is the intent of that. And so we're proposing in the resolution that we have a variety of architectural styles and characters be provided as part of the specific implementation plan. And the third thing is the minimum lot width is less than 75 feet. The actual is 45 to 53 per twin. And staff doesn't see a terrible need to make any provisions for that in the resolution. It's providing higher density, which seems appropriate for the site. Departures from the subdivision regulation. So duplicative street names are not allowed. The proposed street is Roosevelt South Street to connect to Roosevelt Street. So the city engineer suggests that since it will just eventually connect to Roosevelt Street, we simply just call it Roosevelt Street, which is that new access road that would be put in. So that access road is shown as 50-foot right-of-way with 24-foot paved area. The engineer said that's okay, as long as no parking's permitted. Dry Run Road is shown as 66-foot right-of-way with 28-foot paved area. After consulting with Reed, he indicated that we need to have at least 32 feet of paved area per the per the subdivision ordinance, and that's a requirement in the resolution. And no sidewalks are shown on Roosevelt South or Division Street, and that's a requirement of blocks that are greater than 700 feet in length. So we're requesting that in the resolution as well, along Roosevelt Street. The curvature of the proposed dry run road is inadequate and would have to be adjusted to meet the subdivision regulations to be suitable for the engineering requirements. So what is shown on the right is the drawing that Reed put together early on in the early 2000s that meets those requirements, which has less of a severe curve than what is proposed. So we're going to request that they realign it so that it's slightly less, it's more like what Reed has put together earlier. Permanent dead ends. So this is more of a policy thing for the city. Dead end streets cannot be more than 1,000 feet, serving 30 plus residential units. What we have proposed is 1,500 with 44 units. So in order for it to not be a permanent dead end, we need to make sure that we do extend that at some point in the future. So it will be a city council item to figure out when the appropriate time is to do that. Other site considerations, there's only one. Oh, sorry. If you can see here, there's a parking lot with 2 trail connections heading north. Only one of those is necessary, so we're suggesting that they do one central trail connecting towards Glover School. The trails in the grade of some of the trails appear like they might be more than 5%. And if we're able to provide accessible trails, we should aim to do that if the topography will allow it. And proposed ponding may be unnecessary. Oh, this is a city engineer suggestion. So it is the engineer's understanding that we may not need these extra stormwater ponds because what is out there might be able to accept the stormwater from the site. So that will need to be looked at. If the ponding is determined to be necessary, staff's recommending that it be taken to the park board for review. The trail is proposed to intersect with the cul-de-sac, and staff would strongly suggest that be redesigned so that it kind of curves around and avoids the cul-de-sac. And this other item, the utility metering configuration, requires review and approval by the River Falls Municipal Utility. So as it is proposed, the water sewer would come straight down the driveways of these houses and be owned by the city. Conversations with the utility indicate that that is not the most desired situation and that there's other options available for utility configuration and ownership. So we're suggesting in the resolution that those conversations be had and the utilities be figured out before we move this forward to city council. So that's one of the items listed in the resolution. So back to the criteria for approval that I talked about before. So this is staff's understanding of the community benefits is that we're achieving the realignment of Dry Run Road, which has been identified for a number of years as something that needs to be done. We're providing an opportunity for parking and utility improvements to Glover School. We're filling a housing need. The intensity is higher than prescribed in the comprehensive plan, but it's helping to meet that more of a mixed-use environment that's also kind of outlined in the comp plan. And staff will work with the developer to make sure that the architecture has the appropriate character for the area. We don't see any adverse economic impacts. We're going to work with the developer to make sure that the engineering is in conformance with the subdivision ordinance for engineering design. And then the project provides new access to Desanctis Park. And we're going to work with them to make sure that the trail is going to be reworked around the cul-de-sac. So with that, staff recommends Plan Commission approval for this as long as we're hitting the itemized conditions that are in the resolution.
Okay.
So any questions
Thanks,
for me?
Brandy. I'll have them ask after the public first.
Okay.
Thanks. So I'll close the planning commission and open up a public hearing on this. So is there anybody in the audience has anything like to say about this? Yep, come on up. Oh, yep, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Gerard. I'm joined here, of course, with my brother Paul and our civil engineer, Todd Erickson. I think it may be appropriate, a little, maybe just without boring you, a little history on Gerard, because there's a lot of new faces here since our last project 8 years ago now. I think it was 8 years ago, right? West Cascade, University Falls, East and West. Paul and I have been in real estate development for about 30 years. My father started it in 1954. Our company was started, Gerard Corporation. We incorporated about in 94. We've done business in 7 different states, anything from student rentals to high-end luxury rentals to affordable housing. We are actually going to be proposing a project before you in another few months right outside the window here. Had a wonderful press conference on that last week, which turned out well. But getting on to the Desanctis, am I pronouncing that correctly, Desanctis?
DeSanctis.
Project. Paul and I were invited up here, 6 months ago, by Scott and Buddy. They believe in us. I think we have a level of confidence. They have a level of confidence in us. So we started this project, and I think Paul knows a little bit more of the details on it. So you want to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Peter. So Buddy and Scott invited us up here about 2 years ago. So we started negotiations on the piece to the north that we just were awarded funding on. And then we started talking about the housing need, the potential market study that was going to be coming out, identifying what the needs were in the community. We brought it up. It's 300 pages long. And as Brandy just alluded to in her opening, we're identifying a need that has not been met in the community. We'd like to meet that need. So when Buddy first came to us, we looked at this parcel, and I'm like, great, we can make that work. We just wanted to put all of our driveways onto Division Street. And he said, no, you can't do that. So after a while, we started listening to what the city needed out of our development, and so that's what drove our density request. Then there was the request to realign the Dry Run Road, so with further linkage someday to the north to Radio Drive. But so we're trying to identify some a residence that doesn't necessarily exist here. We looked at staff recommendations. We will work with staff on trying to facilitate all of those. But we've built, developed, and managed housing in this county and in St. Croix since 1992. We have a wonderful track record. As Peter alluded to, we're second generation. Our company's almost been in business for 65 years. So we actually build, develop, and we do manage the housing that we do build. But this is going to be a little bit different nature. This is going to be a for sale product to John Q. Public. So we're here to answer questions, listen to comments, so we may go back and forth a little bit. But we're a member in your community. We want to be here. We will be here in the future. And this is a partnership for us. I mean, every community that we've been to, we can always fall back and say, how did we do? Did we make a positive influence on that community? And you're only as good as your last project. So,
Okay.
Isn't that the truth? I think we owe Brandy a thank you for the laying that out in detail. That clears up some of the questions. It's a complex project, and we see that the market, by and large, will be empty nesters out there. We're going to build twin homes that are single-level living with basements. So if you'd have main living, kitchen, 2 bedrooms on main floor, and then a basement for storage. It'd be perfect for empty nesters, and then also perfect for new buyers, first-time home buyers. Todd Erickson's done a great job with the preliminary schematic layout, and I think you'll hear from him later. But I think, Mr. Mayor, we can take it from there with the questions, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have the audience have their comments first, and then the staff or the council can. Thank you. The commission can.
Benjamin Fox, 2529 Powell Avenue. Part of the city's plans for bike and pedestrian plans, there's, safety and everything else. I see that there's a sidewalk on the north side. It would probably be better to be on the south side because I see a lot of school groups, the National Guard do a lot of running around a loop that goes from Division Street all the way out to County Road U and then comes back on Powell Avenue. And that's really a tight spot there with no sidewalks. Like today, if you were riding down it, you'd get splashed pretty heavily. So when they show a sidewalk, I would ask that it go on the south side, because that way they could kind of access the sidewalk to the south, drive to the north. And there's 10 trees there, which I would say that are poor quality or even in the current right of way for Division Street. And that's, I use it a lot. And it's narrow there. Along with that, it would be nice to have some type of screening, conifers or something else to keep the noise from Division Street to intruding on the neighborhood. And then also with the cul-de-sac, would that be large enough to turn a bus around? So if there's any event at the Glover School, it would be able to get in and out. And I think, that's, and the last thing would be, what is the occupancy of the Glover School building? And is the parking lot adequately sized to service any events that are held at that, if you have no on-street parking anywhere else close to that building? So, thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Okay. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Barry Butenhoff, and I live at 18 Dry Run Road, which is just to the north of this proposal. As a homeowner there, we haven't seen a lot of big development out here, and it being R1 was reasonable in my estimation. Now you've really jumped to high density, and there's some concern with that to me from an aesthetics as well as mainly the aesthetics, I guess. I do like the single story. I do like the the empty nester kind of an idea. But as a homeowner, I want to make certain that my water and sewer systems where I live remain good. We are not on city water, so we have septic systems and wells. I don't know if any studies have been done to understand what the water systems how they may be impacted. The number of automobiles that you're going to be talking about moving onto Division Street, 44 units. You're not making single-car garages, so I'm assuming 2 cars per garage. That's another 88 automobiles that are going to be continuously jockeying to get onto that street. I don't know what you're doing in terms of controlling that, if you're going to have a stop sign there, if you're going to have a roundabout, or, I mean, you got 4 or 5 different road situations going on there. That's, that was a concern of mine. Just the similarity in the layout there looks kind of cookie cutter to me. I appreciate that you have maximized every square inch of that 7 acres. And somehow it just seems to be too much. So those are my concerns.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Anybody else?
Hi again, Deb Freeman. I have a question, and I don't know if you can stop and answer it right now, but at one point you said, Brandy, that twin homes couldn't be back-to-back. So I don't understand how, if there's a twin home here and one here, isn't that back-to-back? Or are you putting more homes in there than the twin home map that you showed?
Can I answer her now?
Go ahead, yes, please.
The PUD process allows them the flexibility to kind of break that rule of the zoning ordinance. So that is what allows them to have more than one twin home in the area.
Oh, so you're going to have like a...
All of the units that are proposed are twin homes.
Okay, so they'll all be back-to-back. So what you were talking about was an ordinance or something that they had before. Side by side. But then also backed up.
Brandy, why don't you point out some other planned unit developments around town? So they
Right,
have
but
an
don't the
idea
buildings
what
back
that
up?
is.
Should we bring up another graph or map for him to kind of explain to her? How
Yeah,
it'll be
that's
laid
fine.
out?
I mean, I would like to
Yeah, no,
understand this,
yeah,
so I
no,
appreciate that.
that's fine.
You could do that.
No, so everybody else is clear.
Well, this one, at the beginning.
Yeah, maybe that one back there.
So this one shows, it's kind of small.
But aren't they back-to-back here and then side-by-side back?
Oops. I was trying to get it bigger, but I can't zoom in very well. So the driveways, yes, so they are, yes, it's like little quadrants of.
Right, so they are back-to-back and side-to-side?
Yep.
Okay. Right?
Well, they're twin homes, they're joined at this side.
Right.
Right.
But then you have another one right next to it and another one behind it.
Well, yeah, but. yeah,
They're
there's-
all twin
but
homes, aren't they?
We have a setback between the homes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my biggest concern is this development really being a good steward of the land? It's only 7-point-some acres. It's not very much land out there. And it seems like we're putting an awful lot of homes in there. I'm not against having homes there. I get it. I mean, when we moved into 16 Dry Run Road, we knew that there were going to be homes there. That was always in the works since we've lived there, so I get that. But on the other hand, I'm not really sure that that's the best stewardship of the land, that we're taking care of the land. Barry referred to the piece about, are there any studies between septic systems and this kind of big, huge development? So that's a big concern for mine. I'm not quite sure I understand why it has to go from low density to this big, mammoth, huge development. It doesn't seem okay to me. It just seems like it's too much of a big jump. The second thing I'm concerned about is I'm pretty sure you have been in touch with the school district regarding how are you getting those kids to school. If they're walkers, are they going to have to go all the way back up Roosevelt and across to West Side? Will there be busing there? Will they be trying to zip across M when there's 88 more cars coming through there so that they can take their bicycles back in Quail Ridge? So I'm concerned about that. I'm sure you've been in contact with the school district regarding that, so, but that's a concern. But I hope that when you think about this project, you really think about taking good care of our land. That whole Man Valley region is an amazing piece of property, and I know you people know that. You've recently annexed a good portion of it, and again, I understand the need for a city to grow. I know the Township of Troy was in court with you guys, and you won that court fight, and that's okay. We understand that. That's how it works. But I just really want that land to be taken care of, like all land in River Falls. We have amazing land around here, amazing agriculture land. We have amazing parks. You guys do such a great job with your parks. But I just hope that you just kind of really do keep in mind, is this the best, putting that many pieces of property on that small of a piece of land, is it the best way to go? It seems to me that there are some other places, if you're out in Sterling Ponds, and I'm not trying to say not in my backyard, because I don't. It sounds like it, but it's okay that we have development there. But there are other pieces of property that maybe could be developed to this high density. And I get also that we need housing here. I get that we need it for first-time home buyers. I get it that we need it for empty nesters. God knows I'm going to be one in a minute, so I understand that. But please really consider if we truly, truly need that many pieces of property on that small of a property. Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Anybody else? Nobody else? Yes.
My name is Patricia LaRue, and I live at 489 Marcella Court. And actually, my backyard, let me write my address down here. My backyard is right where Desanctis Park begins, and so I share the boundary. But I want you to imagine what it would be like to be a young couple, you're ready to start a family, and you're looking for your starter home. River Falls is known for an excellent school district, and but your first question is are you going to be priced out of the market? Are you going to be able to find a home that you and your little family can pull into? And with Desanctis Village, this young family will not only be within walking distance of a school, but they'll have a park. And very few low housing have a park right in their backyard. And then with the empty nesters looking to downsize, they also want a quality one-floor living space. They're looking for a respectable library with state-of-the-art resources, which we have. They're looking for a city that has cultural services, which we have. River Falls has so much to offer, and Desanctis Village has a promise to make that happen. I read through the materials. I know there's a lot of back and forth. There's questions of, are we putting too much cement where there's now green space? Those things can be worked out. But I think the basic bones, and I appreciate what they're saying, that's a lot of people, but if you think each of those people are a family, and they want to be here, they want to have a park, they want to have our library and our school system, and I think we have enough that we can share that with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia.
Mayor and commission members, my name is Mark Spafford. I live at 1305 West Division. So if you can see the map that's up there right now, just on the east side you can see one lot. We're the next one. So we're in the middle of the three in the southeast corner. I want to say thank you to the city for not allowing the development in my backyard, which was directly to the north of our houses. I think it's Cerna House Development Number 4 is what it was called. I think this is a good compromise. I agree that the density seems extreme. One question that I have is, what would the density have been if the developer wouldn't have been told that they couldn't put the 4 driveways out on Division? So right now we have 44 units, 40 units. Would it have been half of that if the developer wouldn't have had to pay for that road? The other question that I have is, my house is actually listed in the resolution, and I never heard about this development that was going to happen. And I'm on 4B, section 4B of the resolution. Would anybody else consider being notified if they were going to be putting a sidewalk in your front yard to extend the sidewalk? I thought that was very odd. So myself and my neighbors on either side of us, we would like to know what that sidewalk looks like. It's going to take up about 11 feet of our front yard. We all have nice, flower beds and rock gardens and all that kind of stuff. Why weren't we notified? There was a notice put up in the park, I understand, somewhere. But if I didn't walk past that notice, would I have known this? Other than a friend calling me and telling me, hey, you should probably go to this commission meeting. So I would like to know what the sidewalk looks like, and how that's going to affect, I put $5,500 into a blacktop driveway, and you're going to take out 11 feet of it, and how is that going to be replaced? What's that going to look like? And how is that going to change the grade on my driveway? And then the other question I had about the sidewalk is, how many people do you potentially see using that sidewalk? And right now we can count. We have some neighbors that like to walk. We allow people to walk through our yard, that type of thing. I think it's an okay thing, but for what you're going to have to do and what you're going to have to move, fire hydrants and light poles and all this kind of stuff, is that the best use of the money right now? And then if I could get some explanation on that extreme grade that goes off of Division Street to the north, right there at the east end of the development, what that's going to look like. Because that's really, really steep right now. I mow it for the neighbors so they can walk through there. So I'd like to know some information about that. And then we're on the end of the water line of the street there. And I'm just wondering, is that water line going to be tied in to our water line? Or does it come from a different direction? Because right now we have issues with water a few times of the year, and I've talked to utilities about it. Our water pressure drops to nothing for a while. And I'm just kind of wondering how that might affect our water. So, and that's all I have. Thanks for listening.
Anybody else? Okay. So I'll close the public hearing. I'll reopen up the plan commission for the committee to ask questions. Or actually,
You want to put it in the form of a motion
yeah,
first,
give me a
or-
motion first, and then we'll go into that.
Mr. Mayor. Plan Commission members, I move that we approve Resolution PC 2018-05, resolution to recommend council approval of a general development plan for the Desanctis Park Villas.
Second.
Okay, now questions and comments.
I got a quick question, if I could, of the Gerards. Can you speak to the price point of the units? And I get it that we're still relatively early here, so we're not asking you to, give me a MLS listing price here, but a range even would be good.
I think we're going to be in the 240,000 to 300 range, depending upon the level of fit up and what the actual buyer wants. And I should mention too that we're here to present any questions or comments from our engineer, and we have built 2 different other twin home development subdivisions in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
So.
Second question for you is, do you have any intended use for the outlot number 1 right now, which would be the westernmost, where the curve comes in, or the redesigned curve would come in? Is there any intended use there right now, or what do you see in the future for that outlot? Anything?
The way the planning director left it is we're just going to leave that for now unzoned if we were successful in negotiating with the farmer that owns the property to the west.
Okay, so it'll just be green space at this point. Correct. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I just have
Yep.
a question maybe of the commissioners, and perhaps Susan could speak to this regarding the park. Now, I look at Desanctis Park as a regional park, like we would look at Hoffman or Glen Park. And the way I see this development, I see it's starting to get kind of locked into. Yes. And it seems like the park is going to be kind of locked in, and I'm wondering if the impression I get is, will the rest of the community feel welcomed to attend the park in the way you have to enter the park from the far side? It seems like it has, now with this particular development and this density, that the park is kind of dedicated only to this neighborhood. It's just an impression that I think I get with the way this, I'm trying to visualize this.
Yeah, I can answer that to a point. There was an agreement with the Desanctis family that there'd be no active play at Desanctis Park when they made the gift.
Okay.
And that was interpreted as no active play. But since then, there's been some clarification, kind of unofficial clarification with the Desanctis family, that what they meant was no tournament play, no competition play. It didn't mean you can't have a volleyball pit, and have volleyball activity there, or let's say a disc golf course. So you can have that kind of play, just not competition like you have at Hoffman. And the strip for development there was never a part of the park. So while we're all used to seeing that open view of the park, and it's been lovely, and particularly lovely for the people who live in Troy Township and to the city to the east of that, it's been a lovely, beautiful, quiet, well cared-for park. But it is time to share that with other people. And that water and sewer has been waiting all these years and dependent on some development. And so now we have an opportunity. I agree, it's a lot of housing. And
I guess what I was getting at is, just even the entrance to the park would be up, more towards the east. I know there's a grade there, just to make it feel like it's connected and that you're not going way on the outside and feeling like, am I allowed as a person that's not even from this neighborhood to enjoy the park? I don't know, it's just an impossible impression. And that was what struck me when you have that kind of density and surrounding this park and the neighborhood to the east, and that's where I was kind of.
yeah, I think we can all get over that.
Okay.
But but I do have, I have 4 questions. Maybe I'll wait a little bit. But does that answer your
kinda
questions?
answers it. That actually puts some
Perspective on
on the use of the park as a regional park, and it is different than our other parks.
Yeah.
Yes,
too,
it is.
so.
And my point of view, Mike, to be honest with you, is this does open up the park. Currently, the park, to me, does not have a friendly, welcoming atmosphere, because you park right now on Dry Run Road. That's where your car stops. You have quite a haul to walk to the Glover Schoolhouse, which we have not been able to use because it hasn't made economical sense to bring water and sewer out there. So that this will actually draw you into the park. So in my mind, this is making the park more usable and more friendly to the users. That's my point of view, and I understand your point of view of, hey, wait a minute, are we blocking things off here? But I see this as a good advantage. Dry Run Road lining up with Bob White is imperative. I've probably gotten, over the years that I've been on the council, I've probably gotten 5 or 6 calls about kids crossing there because the streets don't line up. It's uncomfortable, and there's some concern about kids there. There was a question or a comment about putting the sidewalk on the south side of the street, and I know there's some concern about sidewalks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the sidewalks are going through the city right away. Is that correct? they would go through the city right away. So that is city property already. We sure appreciate citizens taking care of the right of way. I mow my right of way and take care of it and, you know, try to keep it updated too. But it's city right of way that we're going through. Connecting that sidewalk up also connects with one of the initiatives that the city has, is a safe way to schools, is an initiative that we have to make sure we have sidewalks that get kids to school. So Ms. Freeman's question about how do the kids get to school, that would be one way. They could go all the way down to probably Apollo or wherever the crossing guards are for West Side and cross at that point. So that does a couple things. This is a good, as Susan kind of said, in my mind, this addresses a bunch of things. This makes Glover School usable, which we haven't been able to use. It has not been a feasible structure. It's the most expensive dollar we've ever spent to get a schoolhouse in the city of River Falls.
And I was there.
Yeah,
And so
it was
I am,
your fault.
and I'm glad to see that this is happening. I was just looking at the configuration and I just wanted to get feedback from other commission
Yeah.
members. But I do, to your point about easements, are there any easements crossing the street to get into those neighborhoods? Where children would be either discouraged or encouraged to cross on an easement to get into those neighborhoods or to get to school? Or is the idea, to answer the question perhaps that someone had here, kids would walk up the sidewalk and get to one of the corners in order to get, that's the intention. And we wouldn't have any kind of easements into the other neighborhoods where foot traffic would go into.
Talking about like a crosswalk?
Like across
crosswalks?
Division. That's kind of what I'm getting. Yes. That's what I'm getting at, is.
Well, I think the only place that you could now put a proposed crosswalk in would be at Dry Run and Bob White. You can't put that in today because it doesn't match up.
Right, there isn't anything,
but
there
I
isn't
would-
any easements
Yeah.
or any breaks right now.
I'm not sure we want to, I'm
No,
not
we
sure if
wouldn't.
that's a good spot to encourage
Encouraging people
crossing.
walking there,
No.
yeah.
But it's to help answer the question.
Yeah.
The foot traffic is to stay on that one side of the street and then,
The speed limit at that point is 25?
I think it's 25 there.
It's different going in than coming out, and I can't remember if it's, I'm not sure.
25 coming in.
Yep.
35 going out.
I think it, yeah.
Would be changed, though, I bet.
Yeah,
Would
we-
be changed
Yeah,
with
I
this
don't think,
development.
coming in, I don't think it hits 25 to the top of the hill there.
There we go.
Yep.
All right, excellent. Good.
Okay, more questions? Susan?
I have a couple. I assumed that this would end up to be an association. You did mention, or it's in the resolution, that clearing snow, et cetera, would be done by association, maybe. Would the lawn mowing as well, and maintenance?
We're currently establishing that as we speak.
Okay, well, I'd surely recommend it, but I have a question. When I first looked at this layout, it reminded me of a presentation I had the opportunity to see of another development similar in that they were set up, and not exactly, but set up in a grid like that. But the entrance and all the vehicle activity was considered to be in the backs of the houses. You know, you didn't enter the garage at the front of the house, you entered at the back of the house. And then the front yards would have faced the green space, or the front of the house faced the green space.
really cool.
And then what they found was that it promoted more unity in the area, more of a community feeling, and you had more, you were looking at your neighbors like when you were sitting outside or whatever. So anyway, I was wondering if you would consider that when you're shaking your head and you sound like you like it, but I thought this is a perfect opportunity with this kind of concentration
Yeah, I would agree. I'm Todd Erickson, the civil engineer, developer's representative on the project. That's a great idea. It's a village concept. I've done that in higher density projects like that. And that would really promote a nice feel to this. And we could do that. We have, the units kind of vary through the site because of the topography, trying to match the grade and work with the grade going down into the park. But it would offer up some lookouts and porches off the back of the homes. That would be a real nice.
Well, you're saying off the backs, but you
Yeah.
mean off the fronts,
Well,
right?
off the fronts, yeah, off the fronts. So the fronts would actually have sidewalks, or connectivity.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, that would actually, and yeah, I guess the density needs to stay up there in order to do that type of amenities package, because it does get expensive. I've done a number of those, and it does require a higher level of density to create that type of atmosphere. So, but yeah, we can definitely take a look at that. I think it's a great suggestion. I really do like that.
Yeah, we could definitely take a look at that. You're describing something very similar to Middleton Hills down near Madison.
Yeah,
High density, lots of green space. The focus is on the fronts. They have a lot of alleys.
Yeah, it's
And-
really an alley setup is what
Yeah.
it is. You know,
It's your old version neighborhood where it's old school.
Yeah,
Everything
Okay.
has an alley, and you enter from the rear instead of the front.
Okay, another question is this. Somewhere in the information I read that there may be a select few builders. And I'm wondering, I read that there may be some basements and there may be some built on slabs. Yeah?
That was, from an engineering standpoint, I'm recommending that they all go to basements on this site.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I do have a concern with them ending up on slabs, and then, once again, the city has to put a storm shelter in one of our parks. I'd rather avoid that if we could.
Okay. Well, from an engineering standpoint and earthwork balance, I'm recommending that they do go to basements on all the units. So that would meet with your requirement there.
Okay, then maybe my final question is, Brandy mentioned something about the ponds. And when I first read through it, I assumed that the ponds were a result of discussions with the city engineers. But now I get the impression that's not the case. So I think I have a good friend who lives in that area and tells me that the pond that exists is rarely holding water. So if we can avoid taking park space for ponding, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think the engineer, the city engineer, and I have to get together and put our heads together on that, because I think what had happened is that he designed that pond, the pond that sits there today, for this development, or for some type of development, and for the road connection. And it finally clicked in my head of what he was trying to tell me. So I took it in, but from an engineering standpoint, I normally take a site and analyze it that it was already designed for some, it was already designed. I have to accommodate the state requirements.
Right,
by
for
with some
water,
additional
okay.
ponding. The one thing that I thought would be nice to this park, it seemed like it was a very passive park, and to offer up some active, possibly creating some areas where the city could easily access a pond area, because that would create some area for hockey. You could or ice skating in this area.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be kind of a nice feature.
That's nice. We have other plans for that.
Okay.
But, so the ponds was the concern.
Right, so I think I guess what we would like to do, the development does require some earthwork balancing and some access for material. So that was a portion of the issue of going out and building another pond. But the idea was to create a sedimentation pond that would have a lined bottom, unlike the pond north of the Glover School. So that pond north of the Glover School is infiltrating everything that comes into it right now. It doesn't hold any water.
Right.
It actually is functioning very well for that. I think that pond is, so my analysis has to go back and say there was no pond here at all before, and that's the rate and volume that I have to meet. And then the ponds, the engineer is probably 100% correct on the west pond that I had shown. I don't know if you can look at up here, but the west ponding system, that could be eliminated, I think, from what his comments were stating. And then we could reconfigure something over here that would be maybe less intrusive for the park. But there is a need for some earthwork balancing to be able to create this city street and have that at an elevation that works well with how the grades come off in division. So it's.
You mean you have to bring in fill?
No, I try and balance a site on any project I get on.
Okay.
We'd avoid doing that.
Well, I'm not an expert on all this, but I assume this has to pass through the city engineering.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So I think we'd work real hard with city engineer on that to get that part of it approved. So there's some work here that I have to do to meet staff requirements, realigning Dry Run Road slightly, probably eliminating the western pond systems, and then working with the grades. Do you have any other questions, or?
I'm okay for now.
You're good? Okay. Well, is it appropriate? I could answer some of the questions that the audience had.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
I wrote some of them down so that I can answer what they had. The sidewalk on the south side of Division, we did not explore that initially. The idea was to connect in the sidewalk in the right-of-way, as stated, and connect that to our proposed trailhead connection here that would connect up to the park, and then create a logical loop for the residents of the area to walk. I believe, yep.
If I could just add in, I believe it's the city's full intention to extend the sidewalk all the way to Dry Run
right.
when Division is redone, so that connection would be made in the future.
Right, and so we've platted us 7 additional feet of right-of-way along Division to make that happen. So they could extend that sidewalk. So that is part of it. Trees. We plan on bringing actually quite a few trees into the project. One of the neighbors had indicated that for screening and for noise reduction, that's all part of what we do. We'd bring a lot of conifers along Division and along at the entrance, actually, to create. You'd be actually looking into the park as you would enter into it. So it would kind of limit the impact of the townhomes there. So it's twofold. I mean, it creates more privacy for the townhomes and screening for the townhomes against the traffic on Dry Run, but it also creates more of a nicer feel as you enter into the park. And I think we can plan it so that your eyesight could go right to the park, right to the Glover School there. The cul-de-sac, we designed the cul-de-sac to a 42-foot radius, which is adequate enough for a semi to turn around in, school bus, fire truck, everything else. So there's adequate turnaround in that. I won't touch on the density drives some amenities. So the higher density, we can look at other amenities, some sidewalk, some other moving the homes to create more of a nicer village type feel for that was brought up. The water and sewer impact to the area was brought up. This area would be on city sewer and water, which would have absolutely no impact to any septic or a well out in this area. So this would all be draining down to the city sewer and create and take city water. So we're not impacting at this location the groundwater in any shape or form. In fact, we'd actually be adding some water to the aquifer by the amount of water that we'd be infiltrating after it was cleaned up in the storm ponds. So let's see. I think that there was a discussion about the setbacks between buildings. These would be twin home units, but the backyard essentially be 50 feet between yourself and the neighbor, which is very similar to any other type of subdivision. If you look just to the south off of Covey Drive, it's very similar setup. So you've got townhomes with, or twin homes with.
They're existing.
Yeah, they're existing, yep. So that is kind of a model of what we utilize. So it's kind of some of the reason why I think staff had supported this, because it was very similar to that and to that product that we're bringing forward. The trail grade on the east side and on the west side. The east side, right now I have that set up at 8%, which is a standard maximum trail grade. It's not accessible. I think our accessibility would be along Division Street once they put that sidewalk in, and then our road down through Undry Run Road. That would probably be our accessible route, where we'd have 5% grade to try and meet that requirement. But it's very difficult to get it here. I think one of the neighbors had indicated that it's a steep grade, and we've got some retaining walls on the development side to create that walking path, and then a corridor for the water main. So we'd be tying into the water main, the dead end water main, and looping that water main into the system, which would run back over to Bob White over here. And so we're actually creating a loop then for the whole water system, which would alleviate, I think, the issues that the neighbors are having. So they've got flow that could go either direction, and actually they don't have a dead end water quality issue either. So and that'll help that situation. And that was pointed out by staff that they wanted that to happen as well. So I think that's all I had from what the public had indicated. So.
Okay. Does committee have any more questions? Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so got a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, move on to updates and information. First, we'll talk about the development review update.
Not a whole lot to update at this point, except that all of the items that we had on our list for development review have been moved through to approval. Last one, I believe, being Culvers, which, if you've been past, is under construction already. So we did have a meeting recently with the school district to learn more about their upcoming projects that'll be coming through development review. So we're anticipating that to continue to move forward in the near future.
Okay. Okay, anybody have any questions about that? Otherwise, we'll move on to, we're going to talk about the official map update timeline.
Yes, we just wanted to, we haven't talked about that in a few months, and we haven't forgotten about it. Wanted to let you know that. We're planning the September 25th council meeting. The council will refer the official map update to Plan Commission. So that's stated in ordinance. That's how it needs to happen. Plan Commission can't just necessarily initiate that on their own, although we've already started working on it, right? So council is going to refer that back to you. October 2nd will be the next Plan Commission meeting where we'll take that up. Staff will have reviewed it prior to that time. We'll tie up all those loose ends that we were discussing originally. And then we were looking at November, council first reading at the first November meeting, and then potential approval at the second November meeting. So just to give you an idea, hopefully have that wrapped up yet this year, so.
Okay. Anything else from you guys? Anybody have anything for them?
I don't like talking about November already. I find that offensive.
My apologies.
Yeah. Okay, so the next planning commission meeting will be October 2nd.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.